Welcome back to our special coverage here on I-24 News. With me here in the studio is Yaki Dayan, former Israeli Consul General to Los Angeles. Thank you very much for coming.
Thanks for having me.
We've been discussing the Egyptian proposal, already rejected by Hamas, but being discussed this evening by the Israeli War Cabinet.
Yeah.
How do you see this?
So, as we know, that Qatar and Egypt are the main players here in the negotiations. They are the only ones that actually have leverages on Hamas. Basically, what happens is that the United States is pressuring a lot the Qataris. The Qataris are trying to pressure the leadership, at least the Hamas leadership that is located in Doha in Qatar. And the Egyptians are part of the game now. They have leverages. They are basically the only ones that have leverages on Hamas in Gaza. So they are a main player, a main actor in the negotiations. They're putting all kinds of ideas on the table. Israel doesn't want to be perceived as the one that is rejecting those offers, although in the Egyptian offer, there are a lot of articles, a lot of items that we don't like as Israelis, but nevertheless, we want to see the release of hostages. But already the Hamas and the Islamic Jihad already gave an answer and no answer to the Egyptian proposal. So we know where we stand. Yahya Sinwar, that is the main decision maker, or maybe the only decision maker, and the Hamas feels confident enough not to reject the Egyptian proposals. So there we stand. No proposals and the continuation of war, and we'll see more pressure being put on the Hamas.
Right. Well, speaking of which, Yahya Sinwar is the leader of Hamas in Gaza and the mastermind of one of the most brutal terrorist organizations in the Middle East ever. CNN's Nick Robertson looks back at his life and his history of defying Israel.
Feared and feted at home in Gaza, universally reviled by Israelis, Hamas chief Yahya Sinwar became the Jewish state's enemy #1. Dubbed by the IDF a dead man walking, university-educated Sinwar persistently outsmarted his enemies. Palestinian Esmat Mansour spent years in Israeli jail with Sinwar.
Sinwar was a cultured person, knowledgeable. He cooperated with other factions and even with the administration of the prison.
When I was talking to him, he always insisted that we speak Hebrew and not Arabic.
Israeli journalist Ehud Yari interviewed Sinwar 4 times during the terror leader's 22 years in jail, convicted of killing 2 Israelis and 4 suspect Palestinian informers.
Sinwar is a guy who inspires fear.
Sinwar ran Hamas's feared internal intelligence. Even inside jail, he reportedly continued silencing collaborators violently.
He's very careful and helpful with his soldiers, but he's also a cruel person. Not violent, but he's capable of cruelty.
Sinwar's release in 2011 was seminal, not just allowing his fast track to Hamas's top political post in Gaza by 2017, but seemingly sowing the seeds for October 7th. His freedom, along with more than 1,000 other Palestinian prisoners, came in exchange for just one IDF soldier, Gilad Shalit, who'd been taken hostage 5 years earlier. Sinwar, better than most, understood the power of IDF hostages.
His brother was the one who guarded Shalit. This gave him more power in prison.
Sinwar called the exchange for his freedom one of the biggest strategic moments in the history of our cause. His cause was reversing Israel's creation in 1948. Sinwar was born 14 years later in a refugee camp, Gaza's second largest city, Khan Yunis. Joining Hamas a few decades later, he was a rising star even before jail. Important enough that Israel reportedly saved him from a brain tumor during his incarceration.
had a brain surgery, lobotomy, which was successful and saved his life. But he never mentioned it.
There was no public gratitude, but once he became Hamas's leader in Gaza, he spread the notion his anti-Israel attitudes were softening. In 2018, telling an Israeli journalist he saw, quote, an opportunity for change. Sinwar's public message for Palestinians didn't change: destroy Israel. During the next round of hostilities in 2021, the IDF appeared to doubt Israel's earlier medical generosity, bombing Sinwar's house. A week later, following a truce, Sinwar boldly gave the IDF a second shot at a rare press conference, saying he would walk home, daring assassination as he strolled the streets. Safely home, his deceptions continued until October 7th, when Sinwar and Hamas's military leadership revealed their true strategy to the world: a murderous attack, taking hundreds of hostages. Nick Robertson, CNN, London.
That's Nick Robertson from CNN. Yakidan, back to you. The thing is that Yahya Sinwar knows Israel so well, and Israel knows him so well, but still some sort of misunderstanding along the way, like Israel's trying to guess all the time. What does he want?
Yeah. So listen, Yahya Sinwar is an Islamic fundamentalist driven by a very harsh Islamic ideology that eventually, at the end of the day, calling not only for the destruction of the state of Israel, but killing the Jews wherever they are. This is the plan. This is the program. This is the document of the Hamas, the founding document of the Hamas. So there are no surprises there. The thing is that actually we were surprised that he actually is implementing the ideology that he always believed in. And this is what is happening now. This is the ideologies that he believes in. He turned the conflict completely into a religious conflict. This is not a national conflict anymore. This is a religious conflict. And as such, Yahya Sinwar believes deeply that his religion is the only one that not only prevailed, but the only one that which is right. And in order to complete the mission that he believes in, he has to destroy the state of Israel by any means possible, and he will pursue this mission as long as he's alive.
And in that respect, he's totally aligned with Iran.
Absolutely, absolutely. The Iranians eventually, at the end of the day, and this is what we have to understand, and this is a message that we are trying to convey to our American friends again and again and again. And in this election year, they have zero attention to listen to this message. But at the end of the day, we are dealing with the symptoms. If we deal with the Hamas, if we deal with the Hezbollah, and even the Houthis, all of them are symptoms. And if the United States wants to create a different structure in the Middle East, they have to deal with the problem, with the disease itself, and the problem is Iran. So as long as you don't deal with Iran, you won't achieve a different structure, a new Middle East, as the Americans wish to achieve.
Which they are reluctant to do so far.
Exactly.
Yeah. Let's talk now about the Turkish angle. We have here in the studio Dr. Haytan Cohen-Nurjak, an expert on Turkey. We've been talking about Turkey before many times. We see the Egyptians trying to mediate. We see the Qataris there. Why is Erdogan on the other side of everything?
Okay, it's a good question. Mr. Erdogan is known with his Muslim Brotherhood ideology, and since we are speaking about the actors in the Middle East, we can also tag, unfortunately, Hamas as a Muslim Brotherhood organization as well. So in the very beginning of the war, he adopted a very balanced approach, but after almost 2 weeks in the war, so Erdogan had no choice but to adopt a pro-Palestinian / a pro-Hamas stance, and it's also because of the domestic Turkish politics. On March next year, 2024, there will be municipal elections, and he needs an electoral victory both in Istanbul and in Ankara, because both of the cities will provide him a very huge amount of money for his political campaigns, for his political party. And while the other Turkish political parties became extremely critical of Israel, in the first 2 weeks he was cautious, so he could not allow this to happen. And after 2 weeks, he put an end to this normalization with the state of Israel,
Right.
and he is now siding with Hamas. It's not only the elections, but it's also ideological. And since he was grown up in Islamic circles in Turkey, I'm not very much surprised of this U-turn that he ended this normalization with the state of Israel.
Try to explain to us. I mean, Hamas is a Shia organization.
Hamas is a Sunni.
Sunni organization.
Hamas is a Sunni organization. Erdogan is also Sunni.
And Iran.
And Iran is Shiite.
Yeah, right. So this is by proxy supporting Iran. Why would he does he have a base for supporting Iran in Turkey?
No, Iran and Turkey are considered as rivals since their imperial past is dictating them. The Ottomans and the Safavids were always in this struggle of having the domination in the Middle East, and throughout the history we have seen that the Ottomans prevailed. And Erdogan, in principle, does not like the Iranian penetration in the old Ottoman hinterland, but on the other hand, he is a pan-Islamist. And when this organization, Hamas, a terrorist organization, is launching attacks against Israel, he is not condemning these as terrorist attacks, and on contrary, he's emphasizing and highlighting Hamas's activities as a freedom fighter organization, of course, from the Israeli point of view, and I must admit, from a civilized world point of view. Of course, this is unacceptable, and despite the fact that Erdogan is not planning this strategy to please the Iranians, what we are seeing that their strategy is overlapping, but it's not conducted to please the Iranians. From Erdogan's perspective, this is a more Muslim Brotherhood-oriented, driven foreign policy. And if you're going to ask him, he would also tell you that it's a humanitarian perspective, since he's always putting the emphasis on the Palestinian civilians. But we all know that the Palestinian civilians are used by Hamas as a human shields, but of course he is ignoring this fact.
Normalization with Israel is all but gone?
In my opinion, yes. This is, unfortunately, we do not have here the Turkish ambassador. Our ambassador is no longer in Ankara. And but still, in Erdogan's statements, we can understand that he is opening here room for optimism, let me say, for the renewal of this normalization in the future. And he is turning this into a personal affair with Benjamin Netanyahu. And he is signaling that if Benjamin Netanyahu will be replaced by any other Israeli political actor, then he might
he would have the option to change.
Yes, but the question mark is whether the new Israeli prime minister will shake his hand. Of course, this is a huge question mark. And besides that, if you allow me, I would also like to highlight here another important issue. That recently the Turkish Foreign Ministry they offered their a new role for Turkey in the region, that they would like to act as they would like to provide a guarantorship for the conflict between Israelis and Palestinians in favor of the Palestinians, meaning that Israel and the Palestinians, and let me say, for instance, the United States administration and Turkey together, four of these actors will come together, will sign a guaranteeship agreement, and Turkey in favor of the Palestinians and United States in favor of the Israelis, they will protect this status quo, and thanks to them, seemingly we will have a peaceful Middle East here.
A wild guess.
Of course, this is a humiliation against the state of Israel, and of course they are also elevating themselves to the level of the United States. I think no Israeli government can accept such a formula. This is unthinkable.
I just like to add one thing, Jacob. I had the dubious pleasure of meeting Erdogan a few times when I was the chief of staff to the foreign minister. And I would say here that two things have combined together. One thing is, obviously, I always noticed that his hate for Israel, his really deep dislike for Israel comes not from his mind, but from his heart. He really doesn't like Israel. That's a British understatement. And if you combine to that what the doctor just said, that his deep belief in the Muslim Brotherhood, and we know that Hamas has operated vastly in Turkey. So the combination of the two has made Erdogan take it aside, a clear side here, and he would back this side again and again and again whenever he needs to do that. So even when there was a process of normalization, it was obvious that in the first conflict that we are going to have in Gaza, that we are going to see in Gaza, Erdogan is going to take sides, and the side is not for Israel, but rather against Israel.
Of course, he's the one.
Let me add a sentence, if it's possible.
Yeah.
In the latest limited operation, in the operation breaking down, the Israeli limited operation, Erdogan was again very cautious and very balanced. And since it was a limited operation, so he could live with the results of the operation. But since this is a full-scale war, so he cannot. This is the most important issue.
Meanwhile, we see some action there against the PKK recently.
Indeed. The PKK, which is considered as a terrorist organization both by Israel and the West, the United States and the European Union, they conducted an attack against the Turkish security forces, 2 different raids. Total 12 Turkish military men were killed, and now Turkish army is retaliating in northern Syria, in northern Iraq. And I must admit that there is another, in my opinion, alarming issue in Turkey, that when I'm opening the Turkish newspapers, some of the newspapers are accusing Israel that Israel masterminded, together with the United States, these attacks against Turkey to retaliate against the Turkish pro-Palestinian policy. This is really unthinkable. I mean, maybe we are, you're laughing. I'm laughing, but I cannot laugh because, unfortunately, some people in Turkey, they really believe in it. And let me tell you that it's not only anti-Semitic newspapers. Today, for instance, I watched the CNN Turk TV, which is considered as a very respected TV channel, right? The CNN, Turkey's branch. They also openly, accusing Israel that we are seemingly orchestrating this terrorist attack against the Turkish security forces. This is unthinkable. These are all conspiracy theories, but unfortunately, the Turkish news channels are there. I mean, they are doing their best to tell their people these fairy tales. This is incredible. The level of anti-Semitism / anti-Zionism in Turkey reached to all-time high.
And as long as Erdogan is there, it's going to remain.
Yeah. Dr. Janojak, thank you very much.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. Let's bring in Jason Brodsky from United Against Nuclear Iran. Thank you very much. Good to see you again.
Great to be with you.
Yeah, nuclear Iran. We almost forgot about that. What's going on with this?
Well, yes, Iran continues to increase its stockpile of 60% enriched uranium, but it hasn't crossed the threshold to weapons grade of 90%. But there are other things in the region that are happening that are much more imminent and pressing at the moment, and that is what's happening in Gaza, as well as what's happening in Syria today, and the taking out a senior IRGC commander in Syria, and that's going to have implications as well for the regional threat landscape.
Add another thing, which is the shipping problem in the Red Sea. Will Iran keep challenging this and the rest of the world?
I think so. Iran has a lot of options to escalate beyond one arena. It could escalate on the nuclear file. It can escalate on the regional side. It can escalate on the maritime sector as well. And we have seen Iran do this in response to a wide array of Israeli operations. So that is something to keep a close watch on. And also, U.S. forces should be on alert as well, as we're upcoming is the anniversary of the assassination of Qasem Soleimani on January 3rd. And in the past, the IRGC has responded and targeted U.S. forces in response to Israeli operations. And so we all need to be on guard for this, given the events in Syria this morning.
So, knowing the Iranians as you do, how hard will they be willing to sort of pull the string when it comes to everything that's going on? There's Gaza, there's Hezbollah in Lebanon, there's Syria, there's the shipping lanes, there's the nuclear thing. And how committed are they to continue in this, and when will it get to be too dangerous for the Ayatollahs?
Well, the problem here is this. The Iranian system is trying to launch operations or encourage operations that fly below the threshold of what would trigger a kinetic response against Iran proper, Iranian territory. And that has been its modus operandi. But the risk for the West has been that deterrence has been badly eroded because of the non-response from the United States to a variety of provocations in the region, particularly in the maritime sector with the Houthis, and the underwhelming response in Iraq and Syria with the United States taking out empty ammunition depots. So that is encouraging Iran to continue to push the envelope and to see what it could get away with. And that actually increases the risk of a war or an armed conflict without more aggressive and robust U.S. deterrence. So it is quite dangerous unless and until the United States steps up and starts making the Iranian system pay a price.
Is there a serious threat on the Strait of Gibraltar as well?
I think that we have to always pay attention to that theater as well. The Iranian system has been trying to get closer to Algeria. It has been building ties with the Polisario Front as well, and arming with drones the Polisario Front via Hezbollah. And so they have the option and ability and capability to destabilize that part of the world. So I would be watching that very closely.
Jason Brodsky, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Let's go to New York. I-24 News senior correspondent Mike Wagenheim is there. Let's talk about the military aid to Israel. What are the current budgetary issues surrounding U.S. support?
Well, there are just some short-term issues and some longer-term issues to deal with, Jacob. And obviously, October 7th caught Israel by surprise. It caught America by surprise as well. And all the movement we've seen from the American military in terms of troops, aircraft, to strike force groups thrust into the region here, none of this was budgeted for. There are, always some liquid accounts, slush funds, whatever you want to call them, that can be drawn from on a short-term basis. But that money just isn't there beyond the new year, essentially. And the bigger problem becomes with all the strife going on in the U.S. Congress and everything at a standstill right now, budget-wise, there's going to be no money to draw from in the very near future. There's right now a stopgap funding bill in place for the Pentagon, but even that expires on February 2nd. When the House resumes here on January the 9th, when they're back in session, they have a world of trouble to deal with, not just with foreign funding, but domestic funding in a very, very short window with which to get it done. The supplemental funding that President Biden requested some time ago has nothing to do with U.S. troops